Hey there and welcome back to the video series. So we created the boilerplate for our different routes. So we have the register route and we got the login route, and we have also imported the Mongoose definition for our users. So if we should test these routes just to see really basic if they actually work, we can do a quick response with 200 if everything goes wrong. Let's just assume that, and then a message, and then we can write here register route. So let's see here, we got something that is wrong. We need to provide a curly bracket here. So we're just returning status 200, everything went okay, and then a JSON message that we are in the register route. And if we copy this to our login route, if we head over to PostMan, and then we have all of our routes right here. If we make a new route, just really quick, register route. Okay, it's going to be a simple one. It's going to be a post request, and let's just copy one of the other routes. So we take the information from here, and now we need to change it for API/users and then register, as we wrote in our application. So if we test this out now, and I can see that I have the application running on 4000 and we have connection to MongoDB. If we run this, we can see that we get 200 register route. So it will actually respond, and if we modify this to login, we can see that we get the same for login route. So they actually work. All the code, the infrastructure code that will lead us to this route is working. But we need something more in here, of course. We need some other code. So if we focus on the register route first, what we need to do here is we need to validate the user input, and that is the name and the email and the password. And I know that we also have a user definition in Mongoose that will restrict the input, but it is always good practice also to validate the input before we actually send it to the database. So that is why we also validate the user input before we send the data. Then we will also have to check if the email is already, if it's already registered, because that means that probably there is a user already with this email, and it is kind of the unique identification or the unique property of a user besides the username. So there should only be unique emails in the database. Then we will hash the password so that it is not possible for a hacker to see the passwords if they gain access to the database. And finally, we will save, or we will create a user object and save in the DB. Okay. So how are we going to do this? Well, first, we will take care of the validation of the user input. And the way we do this is that we need an extra library to help us with this. So let's just install this first. So I'm going to create a new terminal. You can click on the plus sign here. And then we will install a new plugin called, or a new library called Joy, an npm package that will help us validate input. So we can see we have included the Joy package. We also have it in the package JSON there. So now it is part of the dependencies now. And if we go back, we need to have a place where we can actually write this code for validation, this little object, because we also need to do some validation for when we log in. So I think we should create a new file that will take care of all the validation logic. And then we can import it in this file and use all the logic from here. So we will create a new file called validation.js. And if we take a look in here in the validation, what should happen in here? There will be something for validation validating registration, and also validating login. Okay, and then probably also we're going to need some logic to verify our token, because we're going to use JSON Web Token. Okay, so we're going to need a couple of functions in here to help us with this. So first we're going to include our joy library. So we're going to require this. We can see that Visual Studio Code already helps us here. And how we're going to use this joy library? Well, we're going to create a new constant. And we're going to create a new one called register validation. It will accept some data that we pass along, and then we will create a function for this. Okay. Inside the register validation, we will create a new schema, just like we did in the Mongoose definition. And we're going to create a new joy object. And inside of this, we're going to define how we should validate this input. And the way we do this is that we provide, a lot like we did in Mongoose, we define the requirements for how we should validate the input and when we should accept it. So first we're going to say that it should be a string, and it should be minimum 6 characters long, a maximum of 255, and we should also require it. So it should be present in the input that we send in PostMan, for instance, or in the front end eventually. So we're going to copy this line because it's going to look a lot like it for the email and also for the password. Of course, this is only a demonstration purpose, so you can modify this to your own needs. But right now we're just going to keep it this way to have a simple approach on this. Yep, let's just take this guy up there and let's return schema and then validate. It has a nice validate method here that will take our input data, and this is the data that we get from PostMan or from the front end. So then the schema object is going to validate this according to these rules, and then it will also return an error message from the joy library with some identification to the user what went wrong. So that is the first definition here. Let's just take away the terminal there. In the end here we also need to export this, and right now we only have one function, so we would just put register validation, but eventually there will be more when we complete the logic for these two also. Okay, so we are exporting our function for how we validate it when we register, and let's see how we can use this in our authentication route here when we register. So how we're going to use it? Well, we're going to check it obviously against our input. So we create a constant variable or a constant that we give the value of our register validation. And I think maybe first we need to actually import it up here so we can use it. So we import our register validation from our validation. So in order to find our validation JavaScript file, we're going to go outside the our directory because we are in the auth and routes directory. So we will go outside the auth directory and then find the validation.js. And we can see that Visual Studio Code will help us. There we got validation.js. So now we have imported everything. Right now it's just a register validation function, so we can use it inside of this file here. And then we will simply do register validation, and then we need to pass along some data that we get from PostMan or from the front end, and this will be the request body, because we will need to pass in the user identification, the name and the email and the password, and then we will validate it according to the rules we defined in the validation JavaScript file. Okay, and how should we handle this? Well, if we have an error, we are going to output something to the user. So we are going to return with a response of status 400. That means a bad request. Going to send a JSON response where we input the error. Oh, and then we take the actual error object, and there is a details property for this, and we're going to take the first element in this array, and there will be a message that we can use, we can pass along to the user. Okay, so if we have an error from this validation, we will return status 400, meaning it is a bad request, and we will also embed a JSON response that has the error message from Joy. So this will be a message from Joy from the validation that we performed in this function here. Whoop. Whoop, if I can find my route again. All right, cool. So if we should head over to PostMan to see if this is working in any way, let's just run, let's just go back to our terminal. So we can see if NodeMon has stabilized. We can see now it is being stable again. We don't have any errors in our code. Okay, so if we go to PostMan and we find our register route, and we just change this back to register, this will require us to have a body in the request. And the way we can do this is that we will have post and register. We will go to body. We will mark this as raw and then go to JSON. And then we will make a JSON array here, or JSON object. So what should be in this? Well, we should have a name, and we also have an email, and I think I need to put this into quotes here, and password. Okay, so if we write this for user name, and we have email, like this. This could be some information that we pass along to our route. So if we send this to our API, let's see what happens. We still have the register route, and let's see if I forgot to remove this one here. But we can actually see that it passed this if statement here, so it has registered it. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this one here. And if we send it again, we don't get any response probably. Yeah, it's just waiting. So if let's imagine we violate the rules that we have. We just have a name that is only 4 characters, and this could be enough. So the name is violating our minimum requirements of 6 characters. So if we send the response now, we can see we get a response from Joy now that the name must be at least 6 characters long. So this is an error message produced by our validation made by Joy, the rule up here, that it failed this requirement. So if we modify it to username, for instance, then it will fulfill this requirement. Let's just change the password instead. So we only have 4 characters in the password. So we can see that it actually changes the error message, that now it is the password that needs to be 6 characters long. So we have some sort of validation now for our input made by Joy. So that is the first part. Next, we're going to continue on coding and hopefully make the rest of the code for this route. So hope you make this work and have fun with this. Bye bye.